91 million Americans used Buy Now, Pay Later last year. If you've ever split a purchase into 4 payments at checkout on Klarna, Afterpay, Affirm, or PayPal, you were told you were making a smart financial decision. 0 interest, no credit check. Just split it up and move on with your life. But here's what none of those companies mention at checkout. The Central Bank of Ireland just published a study on what BNPL actually does to your spending behavior. Not your credit score, not your interest rate, your behavior. And what they found is that using BNPL makes you 22% more likely to spend money you weren't planning to spend on things you weren't planning to buy, using money you don't actually have yet. If you've ever finished a BNPL purchase, felt responsible, and then found yourself browsing for something else 10 minutes later, that wasn't a coincidence. That was the mechanism working exactly as designed. In this video, you'll learn the specific brain glitch that BNPL exploits, why it makes you spend more even when you think you're being careful, and the exact decision framework that breaks the cycle. So you can use BNPL strategically or stop using it entirely, based on math instead of marketing. Let's start with scale. According to the Richmond Federal Reserve, the total transaction value of BNPL loans has been growing roughly 20% per year since 2021. In 2025, it hit an estimated $70 billion. That's not a niche payment method anymore. That's a financial product embedded into the checkout page of nearly every major retailer in the country, and the user base reflects that. Empower data shows monthly BNPL spending per user jumped 21% in a single year, from about $202 to $244 per month. Not because people suddenly needed more stuff, because the infrastructure to split payments got more seamless, more invisible, and more normalized. Here's the number that should bother you. According to the CFPB, 66% of BNPL users carry multiple simultaneous loans. Not one loan, not 2, multiple, at the same time, from different providers. And most traditional credit reporting doesn't even capture it. Bloomberg called it phantom debt, borrowing that exists in a shadow the rest of the financial system can't see. But this video isn't about whether BNPL is good or bad. Plenty of people use it and pay on time. The question is, what is it doing to the way you think about your money while you're using it? Because that's where the real cost hides. To understand why BNPL changes your behavior, you need to understand a concept from behavioral economics called mental accounting. It was first described by economist Richard Thaler, and the basic idea is this. Your brain doesn't track money like a spreadsheet. It sorts money into invisible categories, mental buckets, and then makes spending decisions based on what it thinks is left in each bucket, not what's actually in your bank account. When you pay for something in full, $200 for a jacket, let's say, your brain registers $200 leaving your clothing bucket. That bucket feels lighter. The pain of paying is immediate and proportional. You feel it. And that feeling naturally slows down the next purchase. When you pay $50 today and $50 over the next 3 installments, your brain registers $50 leaving the bucket, not $200. The other $150 gets filed as a vague future obligation, something closer to a subscription than a purchase. Your clothing bucket still feels mostly full, and that's the glitch. Your brain now believes you have more money available than you actually do. Not because you're bad at math, because the payment structure is specifically designed to reduce the psychological weight of the transaction. Researchers call this decoupling, separating the pain of paying from the pleasure of having. And BNPL is the most efficient decoupling mechanism ever built into a checkout page. Now here's where it gets measurable. The Central Bank of Ireland ran a controlled experiment. They gave participants a fixed budget and tracked how they spent it depending on which payment methods were available. Same budget, same products. The only variable was whether BNPL was an option. 2 findings. First, when people used BNPL, they spent 4.39% more per transaction than when they paid up front. That's the direct effect. You see a $120 item and the 4-payment framing makes it feel like a $30 decision instead of a $120 decision. So you buy the slightly nicer version, or you add the accessory. You wouldn't have done that with a debit card. But the second finding is the one that changes everything. After using BNPL on one purchase, participants were 22.2% more likely to make an additional discretionary purchase they hadn't planned. Not 22% more per transaction, 22% more likely to buy something else entirely. This is the cascade. BNPL doesn't just change how you pay for one item. It changes your perception of how much money you have left. And that inflated perception leaks into every other spending decision you make that day, that week, that month. Let's make this concrete. Say 2 people each have $2,000 of discretionary income this month. Same salary, same bills, same city. Person A buys a $300 pair of headphones outright. Their mental budget says $1,700 left. They feel the weight of that purchase. They slow down. Person B buys the same headphones on BNPL. 4 payments of $75. Their mental budget says $1,925 left. That $225 difference isn't real, and they still owe $300, but it feels real. And because they feel flush, they're measurably more likely to buy something else within the next 48 hours. A meal delivery, a jacket, a subscription they've been eyeing. By the end of the month, person A spent $300. Person B spent $300 plus the cascade. Call it $400 to $500 in total discretionary spending, driven not by need, but by an artificially inflated sense of remaining budget. Multiply that by 12 months, and the gap is $1,200 to $2,400 per year. Invested over 20 years at a 7% average return, that's somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 in lost wealth, and you never see it leave. Here's the part that surprised even the researchers. The Central Bank of Ireland study found something they called the anticipatory effect. The mere expectation of having BNPL available in the future increased current debit card spending by 3.1%. Not BNPL spending, regular debit card spending. Think about what that means. Just knowing that BNPL exists as an option at checkout, just having it in your peripheral vision loosens your spending behavior on everything else. Your brain absorbs the message. I can always split it later if I need to. And that safety net, that perceived option, makes you less careful with the money you're spending right now. This is why BNPL companies fight so hard to be the default payment option at checkout. Not because they need you to use it every time, because just seeing it there changes your relationship with the price tag on every item on the page. Let's talk about who's paying for all of this, because BNPL is marketed as free. No interest, no fees, split it up and walk away. But the service is not free. It's just not free in the way you're used to. Merchants pay BNPL providers between 2 and 8% of every transaction. That's significantly higher than the 2 to 3% they pay for credit card processing. Why would a merchant voluntarily pay double? Because the data is unambiguous. When BNPL is available at checkout, average order values go up. By how much? Research shows BNPL results in 85% higher average order values compared to other payment methods. That's not a rounding error. That's a different category of spending behavior. So the merchant pays 6%, but gets 85% more spending. That math works for them. The question is whether it works for you. And there's a hidden second cost. Harvard Business School research found that first-time BNPL users increased their total spending by approximately $130, and that elevated spending level persists for the following 24 weeks. Not 24 hours, 24 weeks. The same research found that BNPL use increases the probability of incurring an overdraft fee by 20% and a low balance fee by 17%. So the real cost of free BNPL is not interest. It's the overdraft fee you didn't expect, the savings transfer you skipped, the $130 in extra spending you didn't notice. The cost is behavioral, not financial. And that's exactly why it's so hard to see. If this kind of breakdown, the actual research behind how money quietly leaves your account, is useful to you, subscribing to the channel is the best way to see more of it. Every video is built on data, not opinions, and the goal is always the same: help you see the mechanisms that most people miss. Now let's get into what to actually do with all of this. So what do you actually do with this information? The goal is not to never use BNPL. The goal is to strip away the behavioral manipulation so that you are making the decision, not your inflated mental budget. Here's a 5-part framework. 1, the pre-decision test. Before you select BNPL at checkout, ask yourself one question. Would I buy this item right now, today, with my debit card for the full price? If the answer is no, BNPL isn't making the purchase affordable. It's making it feel affordable. That's a different thing entirely. 2, the full price mental budget. If you do use BNPL, immediately subtract the full purchase price from your mental budget, not the first installment, the total. Write it down, update your tracker, or move the full amount into a holding account. The goal is to override the brain glitch manually, to restore the pain of paying that BNPL was designed to remove. 3. The 48-hour cascade block. The 22% spending cascade happens after the initial purchase. So for 48 hours after any BNPL transaction, impose a zero discretionary spending rule. No browsing, no just looking, no adding things to carts. Your brain is running on inflated numbers for the next 2 days. Wait it out. 4. One provider, one loan. Remember that 66% of BNPL users carry multiple simultaneous loans. That's loan stacking, and it's the fastest way to lose track of your real obligations. The rule is one BNPL loan at a time. If you still owe on the last one, you don't start a new one, period. 5. The annual BNPL audit. At the end of every quarter, pull your bank statement and search for every BNPL-related transaction. Add them up. Then ask yourself if someone had handed you that total in cash at the beginning of the quarter and said, spend this however you want. Would you have spent it on these same things? If the answer is no, you have your evidence that the mechanism is working on you. BNPL is not the problem. BNPL is the most visible example of a much larger pattern, the quiet redesign of how money feels. Over the past decade, every major financial innovation, tap to pay, one-click ordering, auto-renewing subscriptions, saved payment methods, has moved in the same direction. Less friction, less awareness, less pain, and every time the pain of paying goes down, spending goes up. Not because people are irresponsible, because the systems are designed to exploit the exact same mental accounting biases that have been documented in research for 40 years. The tools change. The brain glitch doesn't. The people who build wealth in this environment are not the people who avoid every modern payment method. They're the people who understand how these systems work on their psychology and build deliberate friction back into the process. A manual budget update after every purchase, a 48-hour waiting rule, a quarterly audit. These aren't dramatic moves. They're boring, invisible habits that quietly restore the awareness that the financial system is engineered to remove. A year from now, 2 things can be true. You can still use BNPL when it genuinely makes sense, a planned purchase, a true zero-interest bridge. Or you can look at your bank statement and realize you've been funding a 22% spending increase you never approved, one small installment at a time. The difference between those 2 outcomes is not willpower, it's whether you understand the mechanism. And now you do. I'm not a financial advisor, lawyer, therapist, or any other licensed professional. The content on this channel is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Everything shared here reflects my personal opinions and should not be taken as financial, investment, legal, medical, or relationship advice. Any stories, examples, or characters used are composite illustrations meant to explain ideas, not to represent real people or specific situations. Real-life outcomes vary widely because everyone's circumstances are different, and any statistics referenced may come from studies with limitations and may not apply to every individual. Always do your own research and consider your full situation before making important decisions. When needed, consult a qualified professional who understands your personal circumstances.